I was taking a class, because a friend suggested it, on science and knowledge called What We Could Know at Northwestern University. And the class tended to be interesting in that it updates you on the latest of what they think is wrong. For instance, mental illness is genetically based. I mean, it couldn't be our social problems. That couldn't contribute.
Our social milieu.
It's all genetic, but if you take a pill for it, it might help. So during this class on mental illness today, they flashed a big picture of Burroughs on the screen, looking kind of like this, and a quote from NOLA Express, which was great. It was just the beginning of it. And there's 350 people in this lecture class, and the teacher says, "And who is this?" Silence, stuns. Silence. Doesn't anybody know who it is? Well, finally, I said, William Burroughs. He goes, "Ah, yes." And so their problem is that mental illness is often linked to intelligence. And so if you're going to treat mental illness, what are you going to end up with except people who can't use their brains because they're drugged?
Yeah, to me, intelligence starts with a refusal of whatever it is. That's the first step in the dialectic.
That's right. The negation of the everyday life that we experience, but has been actually thrust on us by either the structure of the city, which is kind of the reason why San Francisco is so thrilling. They can't, the idea of the city today is a grid with all of the numbers running, Chicago, and it's got to be nice and flat and straight and no weird streets. But they couldn't really do this in San Francisco, so it has a kind of delightful effect on your mind. It's kind of like a city on LSD. Didn't really work on the grid.
Well, there's a lot of these tiny little, beautiful, actually, alleys that I like to walk around, particularly here, because you realize that North Beach was one of the first civilized developments in this area known as San Francisco, and it was designed, I think, by architects from Genoa. Oh. And they were trying to replicate their home port city, and hence all the little alleys and the architecture of the style of the buildings. Mm-hmm. And it was also, thank goodness, a pre-automobile mentality. I hate cars and the way that, and I hate suburbs and development of the whole auto industry. I can't wait till they're all gone. And we have a real city here where you can walk. Mm-hmm. You can walk for years and not have to drive.
I've been experiencing it up and down the hills, and it's great. I love it. I've seen it from a lot of different angles and a lot of different hills, and it's been wonderful. But I did want to mention that part of our project, I don't know why, has been a kind of reinterpretation of history and going back and looking for precursors and maybe finding obscure people. Maybe they're not so obscure, but we look at them differently. And Franklin's friend Paul Guerin was really interested in the blues, and he did a book, Blues and the Poetic Spirit, which City Lights has published, talking about how the African-American spirit and the spirit of revolt combined together to have some very surrealist lyrics and some very revolutionary poetry in the blues. So it's a wonderful discovery that he made. And David Roediger, who's a historian of race, we also put out a book by him called History Against Misery, in which he discusses all kinds of things. But one was a kind of poetic aspect of sports, which never strikes me. Mm-mm. But he had a good argument for it. Maybe not the Super Bowl, but still for the way people play sports automatically without really having to think about it. It's kind of the way we try and write. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, for me, surrealism, I mean, the legacy for hundreds of years of future generations is, I viewed it as a merging of art and science, trying to, among other goals, work kind of empirically to figure out all the possible ways you could be creative, imaginative as possible without self-censorship, and inspire yourself.
That's the goal, to really kind of reach into your mind as far as you can get into the unconscious, because they were very influenced by Freud and the ideas then. And now, of course, mental health people have come down very hard against Freud. They've found a lot of things wrong and a lot of things to criticize. Of course, it was interesting in the science class that they said that science is always revolutionizing itself. And so therefore, the fact that there's criticism of it shouldn't dismiss it entirely. The fact that Freud was the first to discuss the unconscious and a lot of its creative energy and the necessity for sexual freedom and the sexuality of children can't be overlooked. And the Surrealists certainly didn't overlook it. They even tried to, provoke certain kind of mental states in themselves which resembled mental illness, because they thought they were poetic states. And they truly are. They sometimes do make a very poetic contribution. I think Philip had said that the beats all read Lautréamont, and probably one of the reasons they were so interested in taking drugs was they were trying to get to a particular poetic state that wasn't easily obtainable.
You haven't mentioned the role of dreams.